Hello and welcome you crazy people to Tabletop Oddity. My name is Jay and today I'm just going to be looking at very basic Primaris Space Marine kill teams. Yeah, that's it. So what I mean by that is this isn't like the most competitive list you're going to find, because the reality is you probably want some scouts and stuff like that. I'm looking at if you do a list that is basically the cheap list, as in the push fit Space Marines, either from the First Strike set or Warhammer Conquest the subscription. If you get episode 1 and I think episode 3, you'll get everything for like 10 quid, which is a really good deal. And I highly recommend that you get episode 1 if you can. Episode 1? Yeah, it seems right. If you can, because there's a good conversion you could do quite cheaply if you get that. And that kit is like, it's £2, £3 for the first month, and probably £8 for the Reavers, but still a good deal. For those of you who don't know what I mean with this, they also sell them push fit. That's the actual list, but these are the push fit that ones you can get from GWs, themselves. They have 3 intercessors there, 3 Reavers there. So what list do we make with them? Well, the actual reality is that the list that you can make there is pretty prescribed if you want it to be exactly what you see is what you get kind of thing. Because really, the guy here, you can't see my mouse, but the one on the left who's holding the little device, he sort of looks like a comms guy. You've got your sergeant and you've got maybe just a normal generic guy, right? So what do we do after that? Well, we look at the Reavers. They have a sergeant. They've all got the power knife thing, combat knife, but there's nothing else special about them. So let's have a look at what list we would make with that, right? So, as I said, not super competitive, but if we're just going to use those models, which would cost you £20 for a kill team, or if you get the magazine, £10 pretty much for those models, which is a great deal, as I keep saying. The list I would personally make, I'd have an intercessor sergeant, so who's your leader. So you sort of generally want your leader to survive, so you generally want him to stay at the back and probably be a bit more shooty than, say, the rest of you guys, because you don't want him to die, so that you can keep getting your command points. Fine. Well, that other intercessor, we could have him as a comms guy. It gives, I think, is it +1 to hit or something like that. You can give it to anyone. You could give it to your leader, give it to your sniper. The other intercessor, I've just given him sniper because we don't really have a way of modelling that, but nobody would really mind because he's the only one who would be different, so that would be okay. For your Reaver Sergeant, yep, I'd make him your combat guy. Now, you don't have to. You could just have your Reaver Sergeant be a non-combat guy and have another Reaver be a combat guy. I don't know, one of these. The reason you might want to do that is so you don't put too much points in one guy, or because giving him combat gives him an extra attack. But he already gets an extra attack for being a sergeant. So he has loads of attacks where the other guys just have, 2, or I think that guy might have 4 if you give him the combat one. So you could not give your sergeant the combat specialist, give it to somebody else. And then with the other 2 Reavers, just combat knives. Now, that would actually only be 95 points. They are not modelled with grav shoots. I've put grav shoots here. I actually meant to give them the grappling hook, the grapnel launcher. Yes, not grav shoots. I've typed that up incorrectly. That should be grapnel launcher, right? I'll quickly just change one of them, but we won't change them all because I'll be here all day. The reason being is the grav shoot is like obviously on the backpack, whereas the grav shoots are sometimes modelled just on the back of them, like in a pouch. So you could sort of get away with not having the grapnel launchers modelled, whereas I think you probably would need the grav shoots to be modelled. Now, technically, if you're going to a tournament or something, you might not want to give them the grapnel launcher because people might be like, it's not what you see is what you get. But just say it's in the pouches and tell them to get lost. Because otherwise, you'd have to spend more money either on the Reaver kit itself or the kill team kit. One way or another, you'd have to spend money. And the grapnel launch is actually pretty decent, so I would personally just do that. And there you have it. You've got your 20 quid or your 10 quid, depending on how you're going to buy it, list. And, it's okay. I've ran something very similar to this. It's more than fine. Then maybe you're like, well, what am I going to do beyond that? Maybe I want to progress, but I still sort of want to have more options with my intercessors and reavers. So you could obviously get scouts and the other unit, which is the old school Space Marine, but we're going to just try and keep to the intercessors and the reavers. So the next list is what happens if you buy the reaver box. Not the reaver box, that's a lie. If you buy the kill team box, which includes 5 reavers, which is actually a really good deal when you compare it to getting 10 reavers. So what would my list maybe look like then? Well, I'd probably keep the leader, the intercessor sergeant. I'd probably have the intercessor still as a comms guy. He's still modelled like that. Then this is where I would maybe go a little bit crazy. Like I said, I would not have my reaver sergeant as a combat guy, just so that this reaver could have an extra attack. It's just less having a target on your back, basically. Scout's just another one to possibly use. You can give him, he can reroll his advanced rolls. You can play around with that. You don't necessarily have to do that. But it's essentially the same list, so you don't necessarily gain too much. The only thing you definitely gain is being able to model the grapnel launchers and the grav shoots if you actually wanted the grav shoots, and you can have both. But basically, it doesn't change too much. It just lets you model the things exactly, because I don't have one to hand, but you can have one. One's got it shooting out of him, like he's holding the grapnel launcher, and they have packs on the little belts at the back. So really, is that worth it for you? Maybe, maybe not. And then you've got people like me, who I already have the Dark Imperium, right? And the Dark Imperium, I sold off the Death Guard, so I didn't necessarily lose too much money on buying it and then not using it for 40k, but it gives you like a variety of different options. The main one being you can have maybe like an intercessor sergeant with a sword, which is sort of what I've got here, which you won't be able to see because it's thingy, but it's basically just a leader with a power sword, which still keeps his bolt rifle, so he can still stay at the back, but for the extra points, you might as well sort of take it if you've got it. And then I've got the intercessor gunner with the auxiliary grenade launcher, right, which is really, really good because it doesn't suffer penalties at half range. And you give him the demolitions thingy. I've done the same specialism. I've done the same with the combat and the scout, but it's completely up to you. So all in all, even with the Dark Imperium, my list is still very similar. And the only thing it really gives me is the Intercessor Sergeant. Now, it does not, the Dark Imperium does not give you an auxiliary grenade launcher. It is not in the Dark Imperium. The only ways of getting this is as such. You can buy the Primaris kit on its own. Now, they did sell a 5-man combat squad, but that seems to only be available in the US. It doesn't seem to be available in the UK. It doesn't seem to be available on eBay either. But if you can get the 5-man, I think it might be in there. You'd have to double check. But the 10-man squad's like £35 or something like that. So is it really worth it for one weapon? Probably not. Any other way of getting it? Yes, there is the way that I've done, which is a conversion. Now, I was looking at different conversions, but I actually just settled on Epic Duck Studios conversion, which I will have a quick look at, but I suggest that you go and actually look at it. That's really not the link I was trying to do. Let me get this in here. So basically, it's loading up. The tension. I've got ads and everything. Balls to it. We're not watching it. I'll show you it in my full screen. It essentially uses a what they called Imperial Guard grenade launcher that I got on eBay, and you sort of stick it to the bottom of his bolter. Now, mine doesn't look as good as Epic Duck Studios because it's a little bit like slanted and stuff. But and I've just used this with the This is the plastic Intercessor Sergeant from the Push Fit dudes. But yeah, the arms are pretty cheap. You can get 5 for like a couple of quid. So if you already have an extra Intercessor Sergeant, you can mix them. You can convert it yourself. There are other different ways of converting it. I saw somebody, I think they just took the scope off the top of one of them and put it on the bottom. Yeah, you could do that. But you know, you've got to have the model available to convert. it ends up getting a bit more expensive. Like to really, the cheapest way to get the list with the grenade launcher and the list with the sergeant with the power sword is probably to just buy the Primaris 5-man or 10-man box. If you've already got the Dark Imperium, fair enough, you can just convert and you're done, kind of thing. But I would basically just recommend people stick with probably the push fit guys, or maybe buy the 5-man Primaris, the 5-man kill team box, which has the Reavers in it, and then maybe 3 push fit intercessors, and just call that a day, because you can spend too much money on this. Do you know what I mean? Like, you might as well go as cheap as you can. You get some nice scenery. You get pretty much most of the options you'd actually want, excluding a power sword leader and a grenade launcher. But yeah, you know, you got to make sacrifices somewhere. That's personally what I do. Or if you can buy the 5-man intercessor kit, then that's also good. The reason for this video, as I realise it's probably gone on far too long, is just to give you like a way of just to show you a very basic list that you can make with the cheap stuff. That's if you're mostly bothered about what you see is what you get, kind of thing. What I do want to show is that if you're worried about like not knowing what weapons a guy has, maybe you've bought some models and you're like, I don't know what a combat knife looks like. Well, if you come on the official GW website, quite often than not, they'll actually have, like, it'll tell you what they're armed with. The Reavers are armed with heavy bolt pistols and combat blades. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're a newbie and you're unsure what's what, I found this is to be the best way of finding out what weapons look like. Like, I had to Google the auxiliary grenade launcher because I was like, one of my guys in the Dark Imperium might have it for all I know. There's so many different like weapons and stuff. I didn't actually understand what was what. But this, coming on here, it's a great way to find out if you've got the weapons that you want. And to be fair, as I said, I keep going back to Warhammer Conquest, but it's such a good deal. For like £10, you can have this and this together with some paints and a brush. Really good deal. Really, really good deal, I think. But that's it. Like, just some really basic lists. Like, I don't want to go too much into list building with the Primaris Marines because I personally don't want to buy the Scouts and I don't want to buy the old style Marines because I sort of feel like they're going to get phased out eventually. Like, surely GW are going to stick with the Primaris Marines over standard Marines, and if they're going to do that, maybe they'll get a version of them. Although apparently I've heard that the Primaris Marines don't do Scouts. They're like, nah, we're not stealthy enough for that. We're just gonna run up in your face and kill you. So the playstyle with the intercessors and the Reavers, just in case I didn't say, is you generally keep your intercessors at the back shooting everybody. Your Reavers, you run up and you smash people in the face. It's very simple tactically wise. You know, you'll have some success, you'll lose some games, it's fine. But you'll have fun, and it's quite cheap, so that's why I've done it. Anything else to say? Yes, like this video and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Thank you to everybody who supports me on Patreon. I'm trying to sort out some tiers on Patreon. I don't want it, it's weird, I find it so weird. I don't want it to be like you're buying this from me, but I want to reward people if they support me, but I also don't want to close the door on people who can't support me. So I find it very conflicting. So I'm working on it, and it will get better, I promise. But that's it. Yep, that's it. Like, subscribe. Have a beautiful day, and goodbye. Bye, guys.